Mega Man Issue 2. The story wastes my time with members of the army hiding from the Robot Masters and not knowing what to do when I was told in the previous issue that the army was defeated. So why are any of them left? Oh no, can't have Wily be that competent. Usually defeated is code in kid-friendly stuff for killed, so naturally I was confused by this. They see Mega Man teleport in front of them and assume he's one of the Robot Masters, even though he wasn't shown off to the audience as one of them last issue, because he must have assumed he was shown him and forgot about him. One of them wisely tells his friends to be quiet because he hasn't seen them yet, and both of them have the sense to whisper. They'd hear him say Dr. Light and everything else because they're so close to him. He says it's awful that Wily's making the Robot Masters do this. There's no excuse for one of the army members still planning to fire at him after he asks which one he should stop first. It's not like they're deaf and only understand each other because they can read lips and don't understand Mega Man because his back is turned. He's told to fight Bomb Man first because Light's been reviewing their designs. Is this usually the first Robot Master people fight? I feel like it's usually Cut Man, so I guess the writer wanted to be creative by subverting the usual attack pattern gamers go for. But it's not really fan service then, because it just makes you wonder why Dr. Light, who reviewed their designs, would send him in the wrong order. At least the army does realize that he's fighting the others. But there's no way it'd only be after he complained about having to fight Bomb Man first. Which he could have easily not done, because he's always been blindly obedient and willing to help, and completely trusts Dr. Light. So no matter how scared he is of his ridiculous first choice, he won't say this. The writing goes back to complete nonsense because one of the army members still plans on shooting him because he doesn't care that he's one of Dr. Light's robots when the others used to be as well, even though his dialogue makes it obvious what he's saying. While it would be unique for a member of the human army to try to fight Mega Man, there's a reason it was never done before. It could have been justified if he was shot right after he teleported in, before he could talk, but instead we have padding. He wishes Dr. Light could have made Origami Man or Pillow Man instead, and gets told the obvious he already knows instead of being told that there's no way those two robots could have helped people. He apologizes for complaining when he somehow didn't mean to. I don't think he should apologize. He should get complained at, considering that this whole thing is half his fault. Dr. Light says he'll be online to support him, unlike in the game, and gets thanked. And there's more pathetically forced dialogue, as one of the army members somehow accuses the other of mishearing him, even though they're both equally close to him. So he must be hard of hearing. And says it's all a cunning trap for them, which could be believable of him to think, so I wish this was something he said right away. He should be written to say that he thinks Wily faked Dr. Light's voice, based on voice samples, or used the Dr. Light robot. Maybe he didn't hear what Light was saying. I don't like the question mark in Mega Man's text bubble either, because there's no way he wouldn't have heard what they were saying if they heard what he was saying. Because that means Dr. Light's dialogue didn't overlap theirs. Mega Man puts his hand out to shake their hands and says hello, and it's forced that both of them scream, even though one of them was defending him earlier. Suddenly now he's lost his brain too and instantly believed his paranoid friend. I know he's a robot, but couldn't someone have recognized the face of Dr. Light's favorite creation who's constantly around someone as famous as him? He apologizes for startling them and reassures them that he's here to save everyone, and tells them to have a good day. While it's good to have a scene that wasn't in the game, it wasn't worth it if all it amounted to was more mind-boggling stupidity, which keeps it from feeling new anyways. He sees a bunch of flying little robots and assumes they're attacking, though it doesn't seem like they are until he says ow. He's told those look like the old flea models that were failed crop protectors. I wish it was explained how they were failures, because I don't believe him. And it's a shame, because I love being told what the robots were originally meant to be for, but it's not half as interesting as being shown them doing that, which is far more rare than them being yet another robot enemy in a video game. He must be seeing things through Mega Man's eyes using sensors. Dr. Light says he hates it as much as he does, but he'll have to destroy some of these robots. And Mega Man screams and wonders what that is. And Dr. Light says Blues, the real name of Proto Man. I was about to compliment the originality, but no. Dr. Light says it's only a Sniper Joe. There's no reason he would have mistook that for Proto Man for even a second, because he only gave Mega Man a Mega Buster because he needed to fight Wily's forces. So he wouldn't have given Proto Man one, and thought he'd recognize his way of attacking. Plus, while the artist insisted on making the Sniper Joe the wrong color at first, there's no way that had been the case. Dr. Light would have seen that he was green and known what he was right away. What a waste of time. He'd know that if he had been Proto Man, and was working for Wily at this point, then Wily would have told him that to insult Dr. Light. Dr. Light tells Mega Man he's picking up Bomb Man's location near an excavation site to his east, so he's almost there. I have to assume Bomb Man chose to go to that site because it's the place he should have been at in the first place, as it's the only reason someone wanting to make helper robots would make a Bomb Man. Wily must have been too lazy to tell him exactly where to go because he doesn't care. Because he doesn't have anything to gain in telling them to go to specific sites that are relevant to their past. He wouldn't care about their past. Dr. Light has the overly convenient, confusing ability to pick up a Robot Master's location for no reason, making me assume he has them all microchipped, or else this is dumb because he never thought he'd need to put tracking devices in them if he didn't anticipate that they'd be stolen. If he can't find out where they all were too easily, because otherwise Mega Man never would have bound to them in less than 10 years with how big the city is, I would have said it'd be smart of Wily to put Robot Masters in unexpected places to surprise Mega Man. He'd go to an excavation site expecting Bomb Man and get something else. That could have applied to the games. Roll asks who Blues is, and Dr. Light looks immoral again by changing his mind about telling her the truth that he should have told her earlier and making a nice-sounding excuse for it. Once again, despite the characters and most of his dialogue treating him like a saint, he's really not, as he refused to tell his favorite creations that they had an older brother with the excuse that it'd make them sad that he left him, which only seems acceptable until you think about this in terms of real parents. A lot of people, if they suddenly found out they always had an older brother and their parents were keeping that from them, they get pretty mad at them. That's just not done. It's believable he didn't tell them about him, but it's confusing to give him a bad parent moment, completely ignoring how he's portrayed most of the time. And this applies doubly later because after this whole thing is over, he still doesn't tell them about Proto Man the first chance he gets. So it's not even like it's really that it's not a good time. Mega Man greets Bomb Man and tells him who he is. Oh no, is literally every single scene where he fights a Robot Master gonna be making a fool out of him? I've already had enough of Sonic trying to talk Surge out of it, and this is even worse than brainwashing. They were outright reprogrammed, so he has no excuse for trying to reason with them. Bomb Man has to check his data banks first, before learning what Mega Man is. Would he have known instantly if he had that information already for no reason? He doesn't have to check his databanks every time he hears a word he never heard before. And his databanks would be where his dictionary is, and he would have had to look in his dictionary to know who Mega Man is. He tells me he likes his look, and that he made a good entrance. Why was he ready to compliment him for no reason right away when he's one of the villains, and he's about to throw bombs at him anyways? He runs away from the bombs he's throwing and hides, and then he turns around and shoots him like 4 times in one panel. And already he's defeated, in barely 2 pages. Well, it's good that's not one shot. It's shockingly underwhelming that the fight ended that fast. At least it's better than the pacing being too slow for once like I thought. The fight would be boring with them only having the Mega Buster to fight with. I say that, but in all of the fights with these guys after this, he'll only be using the weapon best against that Robot Master unless he'll run out of weapon energy, which I assume is gonna happen to make the fight more interesting because that'd be good writing. So that's just 2 weapons at most anyways, so either way there's almost no variety. The real reason it's good that it ended fast is that I don't really hate Bomb Man. Mega Man's shown to apologize to him, and Dr. Light tells him that all he has to do is interface with him and a simple touch will copy its ability. I appreciate getting to find out how exactly it can copy their powers. I hope it's impossible for Wily to make a robot with more than one power to justify him not doing that. I mean, making a robot from scratch. For no reason, the artist doesn't make it clear where he put his hand. It doesn't look like any part of his body from before. So with that, he gets the ability to create bombs from thin air and throw them as well as him. I guess he uses nanobots to make the bombs from the air, because there isn't any room in him to store them. Mega Man warps to a quarry and told that each robot master has a unique command signal they use to direct others. So the reason Dr. Light knows where to send him is that he tracked it down to here. So I like that it directly explains why he knows where to go in the game. He sees a helmet and hopes the worker it belonged to just dropped it instead of, I guess he meant getting killed. But obviously if that had been the case, he'd still be wearing it. And since he isn't, and he had no reason to lose it, he has no reason to say this. You can't simply drop a helmet unless it's in your hand, and there's no reason it would be in his hand. The helmet reveals itself to be a Metal, which jumps, unlike in the game, and somehow Mega Man trips on it, despite the fact that he'd have seen it because it's in front of him and he just saw it. It's just disrespectful to write him like this. He lampshades a Metal even being made in the first place, and Dr. Light says they can be attached to plenty of things, but sadly he doesn't get to finish his train of thought and actually justify why such useless looking little robots were made. They don't have any limbs. All they can do is jump, and there's just no use for them if they can't even talk. Mega Man sees someone using a pick above him and mistakes him for an innocent worker despite him clearly being a robot. But there are robot reporters. So the real reason this is forced is that he should have known nobody innocent would still be here when the place is dangerous, unless they want to get killed. But I doubt someone as new and naive as Mega Man would know about people like that existing. It turns out the Metal will put itself on the head of a minor robot. I say that because Mega Man said, "you again," but it'd be more believable if it was a different robot entirely. So if this is the only purpose of Metals, I don't see why they're made. It's creative that it has a Metal head. It gets confusing when Dr. Light says at a time like this that Wily reprograms the robots in the captured areas. Because if this is the same Metal as earlier, then he didn't reprogram this robot. He replaced his head with a Metal, because I guess it was faster and he had to use the Metals for something. Why is Dr. Light saying this when he should know Mega Man already knew this from last issue? He's just being a Captain Obvious. And the problem is that he could be distracting Mega Man in the process. He continues stating the obvious, but at least now it's to try to reassure him to get him motivated to actually fight robots. He reluctantly admits that they're just worker robots he can rebuild. Why is this guy even called Gutsman? It'd be too gross for a kids' game if he fought with guts, so he doesn't do that. And every robot master has guts in the other sense. He says he likes that Mega Man is brave enough to take him on. Of course he would. He wants Wily to beat him faster. He brags about his strength, and surprisingly, Mega Man asks him in annoyance if he can punch lasers. While it's out of character of him to be snarky with his enemies, I find it more entertaining than him wasting time trying to talk him out of it looking like a coward. Gutsman jumps and lands, sending him flying away from the shockwave. Out of nowhere, Gutsman's immune to his Mega Buster. I can tell because he's smiling despite being shot by it, calling his lasers puny. It should be good to make it different from the game, but it makes me worried that it's going to be like this with the rest of the Robot Masters, which would only make the fight more boring by restricting the variety of what Mega Man will do. As what's the point of having him able to do multiple different things if he only does one thing at once against his enemies? Why did Dr. Light or Wily program Gutsman to assert what men are or should be like and say that's about violence when Wily doesn't punch and stomp and didn't get himself some muscles? So why would they go through the trouble of making a robot think in this outdated, narrow-minded way that'll only make them look down on their programmer when said programmer doesn't agree with him? It can't be that he's made that way to make him a better fighter, because then every robot of Wily's would talk like this. Mega Man jumps to the conclusion without even trying for some reason that even a charge shot wouldn't hurt him. He changes his weapon to Hyper Bomb. Why are they called hyper bombs? That's a stupid name. They aren't hyper. And Gutsman says real men don't hide from a fight when Wily would. That's exactly why this dialogue is forced. Unless every time he's saying this, he's also thinking, except for Wily, who can be however he wants and I'll still respect him. Megaman pulls out a bomb, an explosion sends the robot flying in a bad-looking silhouette so it's harder to even register it, and already he's defeated after just one attack, like it's early Sonic X. But even that had better action scenes, because it had the heroes be struggling for longer than this, and I'm sure they had to take hits sometimes. This is the second fight in a row where Megaman hasn't taken a single hit, even though he just started. The only reason there's still any tension when he's in danger is that I'm so new to the comic. If he goes 10 issues without getting hit once, it could come off like it'll never happen. The good guys getting hit in fights is written to get you more invested in it in the later fights. Again, I didn't really hate Gutsman to the point where I was desperate to see him get attacked a lot. So it's not totally unacceptable that the fight ends early. But to have it end in one hit is unacceptable. To be fair, it's a bomb. So logically, you would think it should be anything in one hit. So this is sort of better writing than the game. But it could have been built to withstand a couple of bombs in a row because he's a robot, and one of the best ones at that. It's not good action scene writing when this is supposed to be one of the boss fights, not a random mook. I'm somehow expected to believe the hill was blocking Dr. Light's signal. I thought there was a jammer, and the entire arena was surrounded by this jamming field. At least this keeps Wily from looking like an idiot, but I have a feeling that being in front of a hill doesn't block the cell phone signal of someone talking to you from the other side of it. Especially considering that the way those signals work is that they go to a satellite first, which sends a signal to the other person from above. No hill would stop that. Especially considering that it's the future. Why would Dr. Light be using a way to keep in contact with him that's worse than cell phones? He's asked if he's alright, copies his power and gets complimented. He impatiently tells him he's ready to go to Cutman so that he can get it over with. He gets warped to an old facility, and out of nowhere he apologizes and refuses to be called by Rock because Rock is a lab assistant. I blow up other robots. It's too bad the artist doesn't draw and have to look sad here to give this more emotional impact, and it stays jarringly emotionless. I hope he's not being written to be mad at Dr. Light for this, because he volunteered for this, so that won't be fair to him. Dr. Light said he was afraid he'd start feeling like this as Roll gets worried about him. He bores me stating the obvious some more. At least Homage has rare, not every issue, and we're expected to like him. Roll states the obvious we already know about Wily too, and somehow Dr. Light thinks that Mega Man doesn't see it that way, when he'd have to be a complete idiot not to. Roll takes the headset and tells Mega Man that he's not evil because he actually cares. Somehow he says her name in confusion because he couldn't hear her, even though it's obvious his microphone would have picked up her talking regardless of whether she wore it. As an owner of a headset, I would know. It could even pick up something from all the way down the hallway. Cutman taunts him for needing advice right now, even though he didn't ask for her to talk to him. Cutman was made for gardening, so why is he here when this place has nothing to do with his original purpose? When all the other robots were put in places that were meant for them. I'm pretty sure Cutman's supposed to be red, not orange. But it's good to have creativity. I'd much rather have the creativity be demonstrated throughout the plot instead. She shouldn't need to tell him he's the best robot for being self-sacrificial. Cutman's just annoying because all he does is make puns he should know are lame. There's no reason Dr. Light would have made him like that. Because he would have annoyed his employer. This guy's so annoying with it that I really hate him despite the fact that I know he's not himself right now. Roll tells Mega Man that if he gets destroyed, he'll be a bad brother. It's just an unusual line of her to say. Cutman throws something and Mega Man picks up something heavy and slams it on him. Not that it gets to be satisfying because I don't see Cutman when it happens. None of the slapstick against the Robot Masters has been satisfying. I don't care about them getting hit by energy either. How do we go backwards from Looney Tunes? And once again, as Mega Man apologizes for making a lame pun, I wonder why the fight was written to end in one hit. Against the most annoying one. when it could make perfect sense that a well-built robot would still be in fighting condition after getting hit by one big block. But again, if it lasted longer, all that happened is he'd fire the Mega Buster at him or throw more blocks at him. And that would be repetitive. But fights by definition are repetitive, most of the time. It would have been more cathartic that Mega Man made a pun right back at him if he heard it. He's told he did good, and Mega Man thanks Roll for helping him focus. And out of nowhere, it turns out Wily's able to find out he lost some of the Robot Masters because he's in front of screens showing him pictures of them for no reason at all, even though he'd have things to do all day besides sitting here for no reason. He could have been in the bathroom at the time. Apparently, he had literally nothing better to do all day than sit there to watch screens showing what his robots were doing, even though he'd already know what it was. And he wouldn't have been expecting Mega Man. I'd think that an engineer would be spending most of his time engineering. Better yet, wouldn't he be spending most of his time reprogramming? So he should have only known this because of a robot telling him this news while he'd be busy reprogramming. He tells the brigade to retrieve Cutman like all of the others and bring him to him. Oh yeah, the boss rush. He's actually gonna have the gall to make that padding part of the comic. I can't take this page seriously because it never seemed like Wily knew that Mega Man was making any progress in the game before he got to his fortress. This page is a blatant waste of space. We could have been told this information by a Robot Master to see again anyways. At least I like the off-panels in this comic. They get to do things the games didn't, and they don't take themselves too seriously. I don't talk about them because that's all I have to say about them. This issue is about Mega Man defeating Bomb, Guts, and Cutman in one measly hit each, fighting them in the wrong order. What is the point of reading the issue then? Cutman was the most annoying thing ever, so I can't stand that he only took one hit to kill, where we didn't see him. I'd rather see Cutman look in pain getting hit a bunch of times by a bunch of different objects. It starts with a scene where a soldier somehow thinks he's evil, even though he was close enough that he should have heard what he said to Dr. Light, and half-believably insisting that it's just a trap. It doesn't lead to anything happening like him shooting him, which is both relief, and makes the forced drama pointless, with its only value being that it's a scene not from the game to make the issue memorable. But I can't honestly say a bad scene gives an issue its value. It's good that there's another thing not from the game where Mega Man gets depressed about having to knock out a robot and being expected to destroy them to the point of refusing to be called Rock. And Roll reassures him by telling him something he should already know anyways. At least it makes Rock easier to sympathize with, even if he's silly. There's also a redundant final page where confusingly Wily's aware of Mega Man's progress instead of being too busy reprogramming in another room to know about it. It's sad to say that everything in here that's not like the game sucks, when the stuff like it fails as well. You should know there's a pacing problem when the first issue was wasted and the second rushed through 3 different boss fights. While the first 2 were justified in being short, the third one wasn't.